Hey everyone, my name's Evan. I'm a counseling psychology graduate student at Santa Clara University, and I volunteered for the Grand to Grand, and I worked the event last September, and it was an incredible time.
Nice, man. Well, it's good to talk to you again. We spoke briefly at the event. It wasn't like we didn't spend a lot of time together, but the little bits we did, like I remember you and like just how much fun you had out there. At least how smiley you were out there.
Oh yeah, man, it was a good time chatting with you. I wish we got more time to hang out, but that's all right. Future events always.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of the funny part about Grand to Grand sometimes is like you're with people like a lot, but also a little. I don't know if that really even makes any sense, but like when you're out there, you kind of feel that you're always like around these people, but sometimes you don't get to interact as much as you want to because everyone's doing a million different things, and yeah, it's a crazy time.
Yeah, and that's the challenge is you're with like your kind of your set crew. And so there's a few people that you get to know really, really well. And then everyone else you kind of just see in passing a lot. And yet I felt like I made friends for a lifetime. So it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, same. And I've mentioned this before in like prior shows, but like all these people that I meet at Grand to Grand, even if it's just briefly, like maybe even just at the dinner, sometimes you like some people I haven't seen much during the week, I'll like get to know them well at the dinner. And then like years later, it's like we just randomly run into each other on a run or at some other ultra event. And it's really cool to like have those experiences and like make friends that way. It's fun.
Yeah, it's an incredible bonding experience. Like one I've never experienced. Well, I have experienced volunteering before, but this one was extremely social and was just a wonderful time to meet other people from all walks of life.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the cool part. Like whether you're volunteering or working out there, it's like you're because there's really no cell phones or a lot of communication. I think if you do have a cell phone, it's like there's not a lot of cell service. And so it's like okay, like we go back in time a little bit, and you have to speak with people around you. And it really like opens up those communication doors, and it's really fun because like you're saying, like you speak to a lot of people, and get to know a lot of people who you otherwise might not even like talk to in like quote unquote normal life or real life. And it's like it's just a really cool experience. Like it's something that is just unique, I think.
Yeah, I think and this is maybe my counseling psychology perspective, but I think just it really reminds you that the humanness of us all. We're different in a lot of ways, but in actuality, we're all just trying to find our way in life, and we're all just wanting similar things at the core of it all. And so when you're with people in an environment where you're not on your phone all the time, you really get to know people. You're like, we're not all that different, actually. And so I really appreciated that. It's a good reminder.
For sure. That's definitely one thing. I guess we're kind of just like talking now about something that wasn't even on like our bullet points to talk about, but that is something that like running and just endurance sports have taught me in general. And you can probably find these experiences like in other things as well, whether it's like tennis or football or whatever. But like, it's just interesting how like when you're with these people, like people, like everyone, like you're saying, everyone's so similar but so different, and it's fun to be like, okay, like we all have these same like innate desires. Like we want to, I don't know, have a good time. We want to like support other people. We want to like I don't know, like have these experiences. And it doesn't matter like whether you make $10 million a year or like $10,000 a year. It's like at that moment when everyone's living out of a backpack, everyone's an equal for the most part. Like none of these other things matter. And like after a couple of days, especially, it's just kind of like, well, we're all here, we're all dirty, we all smell like terrible. And yet here we are just having a great time out in the desert. And it's just cool to see that.
Yeah, it almost brings out that like it sheds away our modern comforts in some capacities. And I think that's what kind of highlights that we're all not that different, right? Because at least from a volunteer perspective, we're all wearing the same shirt, and the same shirt pretty much all week long.
Yeah.
and it's like you really just get to know people for who they are instead of for who the persona that they kind of portray in life, because it is such almost this primal experience.
Yeah, that's another really good point too. It's like I think in everyday life and I don't this is probably like an evolutionary thing, but we judge people. We have like an instant judgment of somebody based off of how they look, how they dress, like their demeanor, these different things. But when you're out there, like all that's gone. It's like especially with like volunteers and staff members, it's like you're saying everyone wears the exact same clothing the entire week. And so it's not like somebody's wearing like some fashion designer brand and someone's wearing like clothing from Walmart. Like there really is no like difference there. Everyone's wearing the exact same thing. And it's you really get to just like see people like for who they really are and not for like some kind of like arbitrary or kind of like superficial thing.
Yeah, we get stripped down in essence to just well up to our true essence. And I think that's what really opens people up and also which I mentioned earlier, really reminds you of how similar we all are in our quest for just joy and fulfillment and purpose in life.
Yeah, 100%. So why did you end up coming out to volunteer? Because like I know you run and everything, and like so why did you travel all the way to basically northern Arizona, southern Utah to volunteer?
I had signed up to do it with my dad. So my dad had actually run 3 of these in the past, part of the Four Deserts series. And he really inspired me to kind of sign up with him. And he's 70 years old, and he was looking for something to really kind of reignite that passion and desire to rebuild his physical fitness. And it's always good to have a motivator like that. And so I decided to sign up with him, but my life just didn't allow for true preparation. And I didn't want to go into it not feeling prepared, because I would have been kicking myself if I had to drop out just because I wasn't prepared. And so I just told him, hey, I can't do it this year, but I reached out to Colin and Tess, the race directors, and I just said, hey, like, I can't do it this year, but if you need a volunteer, I'd love to do it so I can at least go support my dad. And it's funny how life works. I said, we just had someone drop out and we need someone to fill in last minute. So I was like, great, sounds like it's my spot. And so that's kind of how I got into the volunteer side. But I've volunteered in the past. I volunteered for the Gobi March out in China for the Four Deserts. And so I kind of had an idea of what I was getting into, albeit that was a whole other adventure. So it was cool being able to drive to Kanab and do that whole experience with my dad.
Yeah, well, definitely. What was that drive like for you? Because I think you mentioned that it was your first time going to Kanab. Like personally, I love the area, but like, what were your first impressions when you were driving like through southern Utah and seeing all that red rock and everything?
I think just for one, it was incredible, right? Because I had been living on Maui for 5 years and I've been living far from my parents for a long time. And so being able to sit in the car with my dad and drive from the Bay Area to Kanab and spend 2 almost full days in the car was just great in and of itself. But seeing just the immense change in geology, kind of leaving the Vegas area and getting into southern Utah, and then just like you mentioned, that bright red, it was really pretty. And I had never been in that area at all. And once I got there, it was just almost like spoke to my soul. It's like, wow, this is a place that I know I'm going to love, and I haven't even stepped outside yet.
No, it's cool. I'm glad you had that experience because even though I live like in this area and like see this stuff every day, like it doesn't really lose its wonder to me. Like I see it every day. I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing ever. And I know everybody has their own place and like what they consider to be like the most beautiful place on the planet or where they feel like home. And it's cool, I think, when other people experience like those feelings, like you're saying, it's like something that I experience like all the time. It's just like, it's just so cool. Like, it's just such a great place. I really don't know how to put it into words. Like, it's just amazing. So I'm glad you had that experience doing that.
Yeah, I think you said it well. It's like there aren't really words truly can't provide a true explanation of the feeling that you get being in that environment. Because you can look up pictures but they just don't do justice, right? It's almost this like energetic osmosis that you have when you enter that space. And like I said, it just spoke to my soul, and it was incredible.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like obviously I do like photo and video for a living, and like so many times I've submitted like video projects or like photo projects to clients, and they're like, "Oh, can you like unphotoshop this? Like you made it too fake looking." I'm like, "No, this is actually what it looks like. Like it really looks like the color is that red, like the canyon is that big. Like you don't even have to like saturate it; it just looks that way. Like it's so unbelievable that some people just can't believe it if they've never seen it with their own eyes."
Right, probably makes your job a lot easier too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little easier in the field, but then a lot of emails going back and forth about how like I'm not manipulating the images. Oh man. So let's just talk about the course a little bit. Like it definitely varies a ton because like starting at the rim of the Grand Canyon there at Marble Canyon, which is a canyon in the Grand Canyon, if that makes sense. And then climbing up the Kaibab Plateau and then dropping back down to the sandstone and then going through all the different environments. So like what was kind of a highlight for you? Like I don't know, it's out of the entire race over the week.
Man, I think it's tough to pinpoint one highlight, right? Because they were all so incredibly majestic in their own right. But I think it was when we first pulled up to the Grand Canyon. We had just spent the morning packing up all our stuff, getting ready, getting organized, and then we drive out there, and we're doing some off-roading, and it's fun because I was driving and I was having a great time. And then you just pull up to this expanse, and I had never been to the Grand Canyon, and I couldn't believe once I had gotten there that I had never been there before to see any of it. And that was probably the highlight for me because it just set the tone for the week. It was like, wow. I just knew, I was like, I am in for an incredible time. I don't know what's going to happen, and I wasn't sure what the course exactly was going to look like. But ultimately, seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time, and seeing the starting point of the race, with the big Grand to Grand sign and all the flags, and then seeing the Grand Canyon behind it, it was so inspiring. I was like, man, I have to do this. Like, I have to do this race at least once in my life, because I can't imagine what it's like to be standing there the following morning, and starting off on this epic adventure. But then the other part I think that really stood out to me was I think it was called the Coral Pink Sand Dunes. That was so cool, pulling up to that and just seeing kind of out of nowhere it's like the sand dunes. It's just these giant mountains of sand. And then to just imagine that the runners had to go over that. So witnessing that was really incredible as well.
Yeah, I think the drive out to the Grand Canyon last year was incredibly special. Like, it's always a 10, but I feel like last year went to 11. Like, it was phenomenal. Like, leaving Kanab, which is beautiful, you drive up on the plateau and it was kind of misty and cloudy up there, and you're in the Ponderosa Pines and it's beautiful. And you drop back down to this desert, and you drive, like you're saying, you're off-roading for an hour or so. And you get to the rim of the Grand Canyon, and it was just full of mist and clouds, and it was an incredible day. I've seen it so many times. This is one of those really special experiences. So it's really cool you got to see that, especially for your first time.
Yeah, the fact that you're saying that it was an even more amazing drive out there than typically, that just makes me even happier that it was my only time that I've done it, and so I got a real extremely incredible experience.
Yeah, and also too, I don't know, I feel almost like a broken record sometimes, but talking about coral pink in the sand dunes, it is such a cool thing. Obviously it's sandy out in Kanab, everything's sandstone, and it's gonna wither away and become sand, but that expanse of sand dunes is just wild. It's so long, and just those dunes are steep and soft, and then the fact that there's ponderosa pine trees in it, so you get this really saturated red, and then you have these green trees growing out of the sand. It's a very surreal experience.
Yeah, it's such a unique, almost it is a microclimate, right? This is super unique ecosystem. And so before I was doing counseling psychology, I was working in regenerative ag and kind of soil science, and just seeing that, it just kind of blew my mind, the combination of different species of things just living there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people realize how high that area is, where you're above 5,000 feet. And there's big game up there, but there's also rattlesnakes and things like that. So it's this really interesting environment of yeah, you're desert, but you're kind of foresty too. And there's big cats and things out there. And it's a really cool place. I don't know, you really have to see it to believe it.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, because it's funny when my dad was telling me, yeah, he was like, yeah, we're going out to the desert. And then when we got there, I was like, this is not the desert I imagined. But I understand from a definition standpoint, yes, this is a desert. But the uniqueness of it was really spectacular, and really mind-opening to just the different types of ecosystems that are even out there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Hollywood has kind of given this idea that a desert is just this barren wasteland. There's just a scorpion, dried up cows or whatever out there. The stereotypical desert scene in a Hollywood film. And you get out to Kanab, or even there's obviously a million types of deserts around the world, and it's they're not that way. They are hot, they are brutal, but they're also these really interesting ecosystems with animals and plants that live there. And when you're running Grand to Grand, you see these lower deserts by the rim of the Grand Canyon, and you get up higher to these sandstone deserts. Then it's just it's fascinating. It's really wild. And even when you finish like up towards Bryce Canyon, like in that area anyways, like it's a high desert. Like you're 8,000 feet, like whatever. Like I don't think Grand goes that high, but it gets pretty close to that. It's really interesting to experience all those different varieties of desert in 1 week and during one event.
Yeah, and even just as volunteers, not running the course, still having to drive out to the checkpoints, right? You still get to experience a lot of the landscape. So that was a part of the experience that I didn't expect, and yet it just really contributed to the overall time that I had there. Was this privilege of getting to see such a unique environment while working such a fulfilling event.
Yeah, let's talk about like your expectations, because you said you went out to, was it the Gobi Desert for one of the races out there. So was that kind of like your base of like what Kanab was going to look like?
It wasn't my base because, first of all, I was 21 when I went out to work that. I worked it with my brother, who was a lot older than me, and that was really the only reason my dad let me go in the first place, was my brother was there. Because we were up in where were we? We were northwest China, up in like Urumqi, almost near the Kazakhstan border, and it didn't feel like much of a desert. There were parts of it where I felt like I was in Switzerland, where there were these creeks and green fields and meadows and mountains. And we had a blizzard one day, so we had to cut the course short that day. So what I expected getting into Grand was much more the quintessential desert, right, that you were talking about, with like the dried up lake bed with the cattle bones, and but I didn't get that either. So it was a beautiful surprise, but it was definitely different from what I experienced in China.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I'm always just kind of blown away. Like I don't know, because even like growing up in the desert, I'm like, oh, the deserts are hot, whatever. But it's like there's cold, like really cold deserts, because it's about the aridity of the area, not necessarily the temperature. And so it's fascinating to me. There's so many different types of deserts. And then even like you're saying, like in China, in that area, it's like you could be in a desert, like say Arizona, for example, and like you drive an hour up a mountain, and suddenly you're just like in total alpine. Like you could be in trees and creeks, and there's like bears and things, or even like in Tucson, Arizona, for example, like you're down in the valley and you're in the saguaros, and there's just rattlesnakes and Gila monsters, and then you drive an hour up a mountain, like literally right there in town, and there's bears and mountain lions and everything just right there. And it's just a wild experience to be able to experience all those things.
Right. Yeah. That stark contrast within such a short amount of time. Right. Even though we're in cars and we're driving pretty quickly, still, even just an hour difference is pretty incredible to see and to witness the change in ecosystems.
Yeah, definitely. So did volunteering kind of like, I know you were going to run, but did volunteering kind of make you like really want to sign up again and like get ready for it?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Like there were definitely parts of me that wished I had been prepared and confident in doing it. But at the same time, I knew deep down that I was not going to be ready for this, even while I was there. And so just getting the opportunity to work with the racers and to help my dad along. Unfortunately, my dad didn't make it very far in the course, but ultimately it was really an exciting experience that inspired me to sign up for this coming race. But unfortunately, my best friend's getting married at the same time. I can't miss that experience. I got to be there for him. And so I'm now doing 2025 instead. So it was really inspiring, because you see so many different people from all the walks of life enter into this race. And of course, not everyone makes it, because it's a pretty grueling, arduous journey. But to just see the mental toughness that people exhibit, and then to ask myself, can I do this? Because I've never done anything like this, especially that distance or that environment. And just asking myself, do I have the capacity in my mind more than in my body to accomplish this feat? And I'm very excited to find out.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like it just like, I don't know, we're looking at people's like blisters, for example. Like I spend so much time outside, and like for whatever reason, like I've never had a problem with blisters in my life. Like occasionally I'll get a blister, whatever. But like when I see people and their feet are just like complete blisters, and yet they're still going day after day, Like that is just like mind blowing to me. Like it's really inspiring, but I'm also like, how do people get through that? Because I get a little blister and I'm like, I'm done. Like I can't walk. Like I'm out. Like I'm a wimp in that regard. But like seeing people just like wake up and like, okay, well, I got 3 more days left. I'm going to do this. I'm like, that is inspiring. Like just to see that.
Yeah, and it, again, from my kind of psychological perspective, understanding people's why. Why are they there? Because I think for those who have a very compelling why, they can push through just about anything, except barring true serious injury. And even then, if your why is strong enough, you can probably keep pushing through. And so, seeing some racers who were running for a past loved one, right? And that's one of the reasons why I feel so compelled to do it myself, is because, we lost my brother 7 years ago. And so I feel that it's important for me to carry his legacy with me and to really, really live life, right? And so why not go do this thing? Why not experience the full range of emotions that this event offers? And so to me, that was another really compelling reason, was to just live life, just go for it, because you're not going to die. Like there's so many medical preventions in place, and there's so many checkpoints and doctors. It's like you're going to be just fine at the end of the day. You might get a couple boo-boos along the way, but ultimately, it was the why that I saw people really push through. And and I saw a couple racers that really didn't have a strong why, and they either really struggled or they didn't make it. And so I think that was a big factor in kind of what kept people going.
Yeah, like the psychological aspect is really interesting, and like it would actually be interesting like, if we had more time someday to talk more about that with you. Because like I don't know, like, when I was growing up, I watched this show, which I watched a few years ago. It was actually really just kind of lame, but it's called "I Shouldn't Be Alive." And it was like all these stories of people getting like stuck in the wilderness or whatever. And then they interview them afterwards, and it's like if somebody was like stuck in Alaska and they were like almost freezing to death or whatever, they had to like crawl across a frozen river, all these different things. And you watch the show and you're kind of like, like I could do that. But then you really think about it, and it's like these people had extreme frostbite or extremely dehydrated. They were on like literally on the brink of death. And it's like, why? Like, what was their reason to like get going? It's always something like that, like my family or this X and X reason. It's never just like, oh, because like I have a multi-million-dollar home or something. It's like things that actually matter. It's like my dad or my brother, my sister, like these different things. And that really keeps people going. And granted, like you were saying, in grand to grand, like you're not going to be like dragging like your frostbitten legs like across like a riverbed or something. But like the psychological aspect, like really it matters. And like that can get you through a lot of dark times, even when everything else like physically hurts. Like if your mental outlook is there or you have like a reason to finish, like you're probably gonna finish. Like not always, but like for the most part, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and it's just the capacity to tap into that almost primal part of yourself, to let go of what we expect, because I think we've gotten so comfortable in our modern day where you don't even have to leave your house and you could just survive. You can work from home, you can get everything delivered to your door, depending on where you live. And we've just gotten really comfortable. And so exposing ourselves almost to discomfort combined with our why can be very compelling for a lot of people.
And do you feel like that's one of the major takeaways you had from volunteering at Grand to Grand this year?
Just the kind of the comfort aspect, or the whys?
Yeah, I guess both. Like the comfort aspect is huge, but also the why.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway honestly was like, and this coincides with the comfort aspect. When I was working that event, you're not doing nothing all day, right? You're up early, you're packing up gear, you're making sure that you're setting up your checkpoint for these runners so that they just get this relief, even if it's just 10 minutes, every 7-8 miles. Just It woke me up. That's what I'll say. It woke me up from my everyday slumber to where I just felt so alive, right? I wasn't on my phone all the time. I wasn't just looking on social media. I wasn't doing things that I just kind of expected were part of my day-to-day life and I thought I needed. And it took away and it stripped away all these things I thought I needed, and it showed me that I don't need much. And in fact, I felt so reinvigorated after that, where it sparked rekindled my love for the great outdoors. So after that event, I ended up spending 3 months road tripping around the Southwest, just going backpacking and climbing and canyoneering. And now those are things that I'm incorporating in my life every day. And so the other aspect is intentional difficulty, where you voluntarily do something that is hard, because the sense of fulfillment that you get after doing those things is incredible. The science is there to also show that your dopamine levels are so much higher and they're sustained for so much longer when you voluntarily do something that's hard.
No, yeah, you're totally right though. Like, I think that's why I guess humans, we innately crave to do like hard things, because it's just how we're like wired, right? Like, people historically have done just crazy hard things up until fairly recently. Like, we didn't have like all these comforts, like you were saying. Like, you couldn't just have Uber Eats to your door. You didn't have a vehicle. Like, even if you were riding a horse, like, it's still a lot more physically intensive than driving a vehicle. Like, you can drive all day and like you're tired, but it's like a different type of tired. And so like humans like want to do these hard things. So we like sign up for events like this because it is hard. We want to like challenge ourselves, improve things to ourselves. And like when we get stuck in these like cycles of comfort, I don't think, I just don't feel like anyone's progressing really. So we look for ways to like, even if it is like subconsciously, we would try to find these things to make us stronger. And I know, we all kind of look for comfort in a lot of ways, but also we like look for hard things too. Just not just to make things hard, but to like learn and grow and to, I don't know, become a better person.
Yeah, and I think we've almost deluded ourselves into thinking that we can't do hard things, because we've just gotten so used to these comforts, that technology for all the amazing things that it's provided. Well, we're still this like primal creature, and the advancement of our technology has been so rapid. The evolution of our physiology has not it's not on that same pace, right? So we're still this caveman deep within our brain and our psyche, and yet we have all these amazing things that can just take away all our troubles. And so I think that's where you see these people who do these really hard things, like these races. At the end of that race, man, the highs that these people have, and that's another reason why I wanted to sign. I was like, man, what does that feel like? Because I've never done anything in my life seemingly this hard. So what does it feel like on the other side of doing that? It must be pure ecstasy, like nirvana.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where people talk about like going to the finish of a marathon, or like ultra marathons or stage races are similar or the same. It's like you see people do something where they're completely buried. They've pushed themselves to their very like everyone's own limit. And they cross that finish line. You can see this in the photos and videos at Grand to Grand of people finishing, and just like the look on their faces of like, holy cow, like I just ran across like 2 states and all these different things, self-supported, and here I am. And it's like you can just see like, even like, that's what the interesting thing about Grand to Grand is there's people from like all over the place, and their language, no one, like, I don't know, half the people don't even speak English that well, which is totally fine, obviously, because I don't speak any other languages. But like everybody can just communicate like just by smiling. You can like congratulate somebody just by looking at them and smiling, giving them a hug. And like everyone's just extremely excited and stoked for one another. And like it's just the coolest thing ever to see that. And to experience that for yourself is just like a next level experience. So it's really, really cool thing.
Yeah, and you kind of reminded me of just the camaraderie that you see being built. I mean, we talked about it briefly, with other volunteers, but seeing the camaraderie and the friendships that are built among the runners. They didn't know each other at all, and barely, maybe even, like you said, they don't speak the same language. But the friendships and the bonds that are created, in that short period of time is incredible. And then the other thing, at the finish line, seeing the look on people's faces when they take a bite of that piece of pizza at the end. Oh my gosh. That's another form of ecstasy, right? When you've deprived yourself of these things that we have now gotten so accustomed to, and then you kind of reemerge into that, it's just bliss.
Yeah, maybe even more so. Like putting on a clean pair of clothes, taking a shower. Those sort of things are something we take for granted in everyday life.
Well, as much, I had so much fun doing this just as a volunteer and cheering on all these people to help them in whatever tiny little way I could to help them get closer to that finish line. But when I took a shower, right, like just going after on backpacking trips and everything, but this is such an amazing event. And then to take a shower after that, that was incredible.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like when you do Grand to Grand, it's like that amplified by probably 10. You get the endorphins, you get real food, and you get a shower. Let's talk about like some of like I don't know, not to like sound funny, but like the chores or the jobs of volunteer, because like there's all these different like things you could do to volunteer at a race, right? Like a little bit different at Grand to Grand because you don't have people out there cooking or doing things. But like, what exactly did you do like throughout the week? Like, what was your kind of like your crew doing?
Yeah, so we get we get placed into checkpoint teams. So shout out to Checkpoint 3, that's my crew. And you have a checkpoint leader, and they're kind of just they pretty much oversee all the logistics of that checkpoint. And then sometimes you have a driver who's also the leader. So for me, I was the driver of the group, and I loved it. I got to drive a massive F-250, which was a lot of fun because I don't get to drive that in my everyday life, especially off-roading. So you have your training for the first few days. They really prepare you, so you're getting used to using the Garmin InReach. You're getting used to just setting up what the checkpoint needs to look like, what to kind of expect when the runners are coming in. So they give you some pointers. And then from there, you gather up your stuff. And then for the day, like we were talking about driving out to the Grand Canyon for the first base camp, we get out there, and that night, not a lot to do except just make sure that we know where we're going for the next day for the checkpoint. So every morning we'd get up at 5, I think, and we'd have breakfast at 5:45. And from there, we would just gather up all our stuff, get our truck loaded up. Then we'd convoy out as a group, and then we'd start to split off in different directions to set up our checkpoints. So for us at Checkpoint 3, because we're a little later on in the day, we weren't in a big rush to get set up. So we could kind of take our time a little bit. But you get out to the checkpoint, which is really fun. You're using GPS. It's almost this adventure within an adventure. And from that point, you set up your checkpoint. You make sure you have your water station set up. You've got your kind of the book that you take, when racers are coming in, you mark their time and their name. And then from there, you just kind of hang out for a bit. And then once the runners start coming in, usually the first few, it's pretty scattered. And then you kind of get the middle of the pack. And then it's just this onslaught of just runners coming in, and, you're running around, and it's like, I made sure that everyone's got water, and how's everyone doing, just checking in. And I think a part of just my innate desire to connect with people, to help people, we really just wanted to provide encouragement. How are you doing? Just someone to talk to that isn't, in their own head. And the best part about our checkpoint is that Bob, part of the crew, he went around at the beginning of the race and got everyone's favorite songs. And he had his Bluetooth speaker. And so runners would come in, and he had their bib number as a playlist. So for whatever songs they had, someone would yell out to Bob, "You got 224 coming in," and then he would pull up their playlist and start playing their song on full blast. And just the look on their faces when they hear that, that's like, they really perk up, and it changes their whole mentality for some of them if they're really struggling. And so that was a big part for us. Part of it wasn't a chore; it was a joy. It was a blessing to be able to bring just a little bit of humor or excitement or encouragement to someone. And then from there, once the last runner comes through, you've got your designated sweepers, and we can talk about that if you want to. But if you're not sweeping, you close up checkpoint and you drive to the next base camp. And then you just make sure you've got everything all set for the next day, and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I forgot about the music part. I only heard it one time, and it was when I forgot what day it is. It's where you go through the tunnel, then you have that climb up the dry fall. And he was out there playing the music, and it's so funny that like, well, it's not funny, it's interesting and fun because like everyone, like you were saying, like lit up. They're like, oh, they weren't expecting that. And it was
Yeah.
like so cool to like just see people like just stoked to like do this little climb, hear their favorite song, and then carry on with the day. Like everyone was really excited about that.
Yeah, and especially when, there's not too many people coming in, you can be very selective. It's like, okay, each person gets their song. And then if because some guys talking about the camaraderie, they come in and they kind of buddy up. It's like, okay, you and I kind of have similar endurance. Let's just stick it out together. Let's do this. Let's support each other and get each other to the finish line. So they'd come in and be like, all right, whose song is it today? And they'd be like, oh, I had it yesterday. It's their song today. And so it was really fun. We got to know a lot of the runners pretty quickly just because of that. Kind of opened them up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I don't know, like a culture, not a cultural thing. What would you call it? Like a cross cultural thing, I guess you could say. Like everyone likes music, right? Like everyone has, especially when it's like a song maybe from their whatever country they're from. Say they're from Oman or something. It's like something to remind them of home. Because even if you are in like a foreign country that you really enjoy, you still love your home, right? So you want to hear something from home that just reminds you, like kind of perks you up, and I don't know, it can send you on your way in a very good way.
Yeah. And we had a great time doing it because then we were just listening. I got so much new music for my personal running playlist. So it was really fun. And, you get to see just the different sides of people. And then other people, you've got some people hanging out on the checkpoint just trying to gather themselves to get ready. And then we'll put on a song and they perk up and they're like, I love this song, and it's just, it builds a lot of relationships through music.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about sweeping. Like you mentioned that part of the responsibility of being a volunteer is the sweeping aspect. And from like the film, like video perspective, like watching sweepers out there, it's like, looks like you're just having a blast the entire time. Like, not that like, I always enjoy filming. Like I love shooting and running the camera, but sometimes when you guys are out there, I'm just like, oh man, that looks super fun to like run and hike through like this amazing place and just kind of pick up the flags and talk to runners and stuff. So what was your experience like sweeping out there, and where did you sweep?
Sweeping was one of my favorite parts because it scratched that itch that I had because I wasn't running it, but part of me wanted to be out there. And so it allows you to, experience parts of the course, move your body, because sometimes you're standing around all day, kind of helping runners and, excuse me. And so what happens is the last runner comes in. Sometimes they're close to the cutoff time for that checkpoint, so they've got to keep moving. So what happens is the sweepers from the previous checkpoint come in, and then they hand off all the gear. So usually it's your Garmin InReach, like your SatCom, and then the phone connected to the InReach. And then they have these really cool, I want to call them, they're almost like holsters that you wear around your waist. And they kind of like custom made these for this very specific reason, because you've got the flags with a little metal that you stick in the ground. And so you go and you just collect the flags. So you hand off all your stuff. Whoever's sweeping from that checkpoint will then follow the last runner. And you don't want to just be right on the runner, on their tail. Sometimes they just want to socialize, and other times they kind of just are in their head and they just want to keep moving. So you don't want to, really like bother them and feel like you're pushing them. So you leave some room if they need it. But we made such an emphasis on leave no trace. So making sure that we didn't miss a single flag, or sometimes they'll pin the ribbon to a tree or something. So we put a huge emphasis on making sure that we didn't leave anything behind. So you follow the runners and you get to the next checkpoint. And so the first day I did sweeping was actually the first stage. And I went about 8 miles. And I can't remember exactly where it was specifically, but it was a very flat portion with lots of cacti. So I was like, you know what? This is a great way to experience this, because we heard some interesting stories of people stepping on them and getting some thorns in their foot. So I tried to be pretty vigilant. But ultimately, it was a great time. And when I got to the next checkpoint, I wanted to keep going. Like, it was really fun. And so when you're sweeping, it's always one volunteer and it's one medic. And you really get to know that person very quickly. And so I really cherished my time just walking with the medics that I walked with. And then the second time I did the sweeping was, God, I can't even remember, but it was much more brush. It was actually pretty gnarly, and my gaiters got ripped. So that was an interesting experience. So in essence, I got a nice taste of what the course is like just based on my short experiences walking.
Yeah, I think it is kind of one of the fun parts of sweeping is like, there's a lot of like fun aspects of it. Like one, you get to know the person you're sweeping with really well, and because you have a lot of time together and you're just out there just like walking. It's like, you're not going to just not talk, right? But then also it's like you need, maybe depending on like what you're saying, the last runner, like how they're feeling, maybe you get to communicate with them, like hang out with them for a minute or something, even help get them through. Cause like if they're in a really bad spot, just talking to somebody can be really beneficial, especially if you're alone. But then on top of that too, it's like, this is kind of like selfish, I guess, is like you get to like scout the course, right? You're like, okay, so when you come back to run next year, you're gonna be like, oh, like I know this section, I know what I need to wear, what I need to do, like to get through this bit. It's like, okay, your gaiters ripped, like okay, like maybe I need to like get different gaiters, or maybe I need to like wear different shoes or something. So it's kind of like run beta where you get to have fun, but then also like see the course, which a lot of people aren't able to do. So it's kind of a pretty fun experience.
Yeah, it was a really just a sampler dry run of what to potentially expect, at least from different terrains. And I think just based on my experience and talking to other people, the two sections that I swept were some of the more challenging in regards to just vegetation. So in a way, I feel kind of lucky that I got to experience that. You made a great point about, kind of encouraging someone to keep going, because if you're out in the middle of nowhere, right, you don't want someone to give up. You want to get them to the next checkpoint. So at least, we have medical supplies, we have a vehicle, we can deal with things. But the last thing you want is for them to just sit down and say, I'm done. And so we really encourage, runners to not do that. Just try and talk people out of their heads just enough to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. So I think like maybe I'm wrong here, but you got out to Kanab a few days early, right? Before the race started?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was that part of the volunteer thing too? Like you guys kind of get to hang out for a bit and like get to see the area and talk to people?
Yeah, you come in because you have to get trained. Because what I really appreciate about Grand is they really trust their volunteers. It's not like you're just there to hand out water, right? Like you're navigating the terrain, you're getting your truck and the whole checkpoint supplies out there, and they really trust you to be a support unit for the race. And I really appreciated that because I enjoy the logistical kind of problem solving side. So they train you really well. But while I was out there, I got to actually just do some hiking. And that I was like, this is awesome. Just kind of hanging out, getting to know people, getting ready, not having pre-race jitters or anything, it almost felt like vacation.
Yeah, it's like vacation with the purpose, if that makes sense, right? Like you're out there having a good time. You're also like helping other people, which is very fulfilling, and you get to be in a beautiful place for a week to 10 days or whatever. So there's not really any downside, honestly.
No, I loved this experience, quite frankly, more. Well, context is very different, but more so than my time in China. One, because I was 21, so it's like, I was just a kid, right? Like, I was just happy to be there. But this time, being really trusted to make parts of the race, work smoothly. And I took a lot of pride in that. Our whole checkpoint team really took a lot of pride in providing a good experience for the runners. Like we talked about the music, the service, and just checking in and encouragement. And we had such a great time doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think from like a lot of the runners that I've spoken to over the years about it, they always really appreciate the volunteers. Like just being out there, I think you learn just to be grateful for like little things. And like, yeah, it's like you're handing out water, like you're helping people with these little things, but like one's really rewarding for you as a volunteer, but also the runners really appreciate it. And it's not like it is something simple in a lot of regards, right? Like you're filling someone's water, or like popping a blister or whatever. But like those little things matter. And it's like, I don't know. It's just like, I think a lot of times in like quote unquote real life, we just think like the only things that matter are like something big. But in reality, like these little things are the most important things. They're just very human, and like helping somebody, even the littlest way, is like the greatest thing ever. And I think volunteers feel that as well as the runners.
Yeah. Oh man, the number of runners that were just so grateful every time. And I'm like, hey, this is what I signed up to do, but I think that's kind of my mentality, is just to be of service to other people when I can be, and to just provide that little moment of kindness when their day has gone to hell. They've got all these blisters, and maybe they like ripped their gator, or something's wrong with their pack, and just um, kind of lifting their spirits. And we really tried to do that at our checkpoint, and I think it showed.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. And really just like, I think everyone's grateful for all volunteers and ones that take it and like are, I don't know, really caring and like whatever. It's like, it is really cool to see. But yeah, let's kind of wrap it up here though, man. It's been a little bit of time and I know you got some studying and packing to do. You got a lot going on. But definitely appreciate your time and you volunteering, and excited to see you race it next year in 2025.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me, man. I can't wait to be out on the course, and part of me wishes that I could at least go volunteer this year, but it's just not happening. But I think in the future I'll still make it happen.
What's more important, volunteering or your best friend's wedding?
Best friend's wedding for sure, but hopefully that only happens once. So
you only have one best friend, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got plenty more grand to grands to show up to.